everyone. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there in person. I had scheduled time off with my family. We're getting ready to go for some more baseball this weekend. And Sarah is unfortunately sick, so I'm filming this from my backyard. We're doing a panel discussion today on transitions, and this is the transitions from your primary residence into Woodland Pond. And the Mental Health and Wellness Task Force identified some time ago that this really is a very impactful emotional journey when you come into Woodland Pond from your primary residence. And it's something that we really don't talk enough about. And I don't know if we do enough to support the residents, quite frankly. And I think that the conversation really needs to start there. I'm hoping that today, through the members of the panel and also from folks that are in the audience, hopefully willing to talk about their own experiences, maybe some of the challenges that you are feeling now or felt when you moved in, maybe some of the opportunities that you felt, or things that you felt supported by the Welcome Committee or your mentor from the Welcome Committee, ways that maybe we can support you better, things that we can be doing better. This is our goal, is to find ways to really do this process better and improve the process of supporting residents through the transition. But really we want to start the conversation and to talk about the fact that this is a huge transition, and really emotionally challenging, and it really has to be when we think about the fact that, you know, probably this is the biggest change that most of our residents have dealt with, other than, you know, maybe grief or loss related changes for either illness or maybe losing a spouse or, you know, something like that. This is really the biggest change many of our residents have faced probably in decades. I think it's incumbent upon us to talk about it and really call it what it is, and provide more support for that. So I'm excited that we're talking about it today, and I want us to do more around this formally and informally. So I appreciate the efforts of the Mental Health and Wellness Task Force members in being present today to start the conversation, and I hope that folks are willing to share their experiences. And I look forward also to the roundtable discussion on Monday to talk about how folks feel that the panel goes today. So thank you very much for participating, and I will see you all next week. Thanks.
And thanks to Michelle. She's practicing her mental health by being with her family and her son in his baseball game in New Jersey. And Sarah would be the one taking over the mic right now, but she's practicing her wellness. Maybe some of you heard that she's come down with COVID again. These are all issues that are important. So hopefully our task force, that is Michelle's and Sarah's task force, will bring some ideas that you haven't considered. And then here's what's going on. I have a timer. We're not going to talk more than 3 minutes per person, talking about different issues relating to transition. And then we're going to turn it over to you, because every person in this room has made a transition to get here, is making a transition on a daily basis just being here. You know, this happens with teenagers. They go from one stage to, oh my gosh, I'm in junior high and now I'm going to high school, and then they go to college, or they have to deal with whatever the family. Transition is not a new word for you. We've done some things since we started the task force over a year ago to help us live here. Back in October, we had a caregivers Zoom video, because caregiving is a big role for many of us living here. We also had a program most recently with Nina Smiley on meditation. And prior to that, we had Gerda Meisel talking with us with all of us about drugs, medications, our uses. Who am I forgetting, team? Somebody else. Amy Nitsa. Yeah, she came from SUNY, and she did a wonderful program for us on resilience. Well, resilience is a strength you have. You showed up. You made it to this, and thank you. We've got a good room full of individuals. A few things I will introduce now. Our team of the task force. Wayne, Ronnie Sue, and Tamar. All first names because they're friends. We're our friends. I never knew these people before. They transitioned, so have I. And so have you.
And she's Pat.
Oh yes, I'm Pat. I'm wearing a different hat today. The other day my hat was taking your names for the ice cream social. And that's gonna be what you are too. You're gonna change your hats every day. You're gonna be doing more and more. And then you're gonna have to find out, how do you limit yourself? How do you pick and choose? But those are good things. Those are good things that we have here. So today, transition, Michelle mentioned it. There will be a follow-up to today's discussion on Monday at 10 o'clock. I'm going to just start now with something Sarah was going to share with you in her absence. She's the one who really deals with you on a first name basis when you first move here. She knows the different needs that you have. And if you find out you have more needs than you've expressed, it's up to you to see her. That's what her role is. But she made a collection of comments that she's gathered, and I selected a few of them for you. Maybe you relate. After a year here, I still feel like I'm on a hotel and a vacation. It doesn't feel like home to me yet. I don't feel that I could possibly be old enough to be here. But I am. I'm old enough. Another comment, will I fit in now that I'm here? It's an adjustment being here and just being checked on every day. This is more social than I have ever been. Especially if you came from your own home and you were independent, perhaps as a single or as a couple, and all of a sudden, a lot more social. This one, my wife and I had a house that we dreamed of, and then she died. I haven't been alone in over 60 years. And people here, we no longer have a purpose. These are all thoughts. Many of them are thoughts you may have had, and yours is unique. So what our panel is going to do is talk a little bit, 3-minute timing. We're going to go through, and then it's your show. Because the transition is to help all of us. Think about the transition. How well did you feel when you came in? I can ask that question easily because I've been here 9 years. But many of you have not. How many of you have been here less than a year? This is for our panel to see. Like a dozen people, less than a year. How many of you have been here before COVID? So it's really a wide span. Some of you have been here longer than I, but I won't point fingers. I'm going to turn it over to Wayne, who will share his thoughts.
thinking about the variables that differ, the first thing that came to my mind when I got here a year and a half ago was I wonder how many people are from the city the way I'm from. And I quickly saw that there were a lot more people from IBM than there were from New York City, but that's fine. I also had for years lived in a weekend home in rural Pennsylvania, and I was looking for something that wasn't the city and wasn't rural, so I chose well. But the difference between the adjustment, a quick adjustment and a slow adjustment is something that I benefited from. I wasn't finished with my private practice. I had another year of work to do. And so we made an arrangement. I just happened to come here every now and then for a year before I actually moved in. That slow transition enabled me, one, to see faces that originally were all covered with masks, and eventually I saw faces. Also, I got used to the friendliness, which is typical of the staff, from both the concierge and from the maintenance guys, because I would come here and they would say, what do you have to bring to the apartment? Little by little I brought things. Most people don't have the benefit of having a whole year. In any event, many people have families, relatives, children, grandchildren, whomever, who are nearby or who welcome them from nearby. I had nobody in the Northeast, so we all have our advantages and disadvantages of the move. I was used to having people living upstairs and next door and below me. I was just used to apartment living, and quickly I realized there were a lot of people who came from homes. The complications of that move is, I think, more than the complications of leaving an apartment, because homes tend to be larger in contemporary America, and people have to downsize. And if there are two people, they're a support for each other in moving and transitioning, but that's also, you could argue about, should we keep this, should we get rid of this, how do we downsize, during that year, I realized that my having a car made me more like the people who came from the suburbs. There were people from the city who I saw were no longer driving, and so or didn't have much of a need to drive in the city. In fact, it's usually foolish to have a car in the city. You come here and you don't have a car, and that has a whole big impact on the kind of life you have here that you've transitioned to. Because if you don't have a car, you get driven either by friends or by the staff, on the bus, for shopping and the other things that those of us with cars take for granted. I don't think there's a tendency for people in the city to have more or less than people from the suburbs or from nearby. In terms of culture shock, I think that a lot is the personality variable and how much one is used to being alone or how much one's used to making transitions. Some people were in the same home for 50 years and suddenly it was leaving not just a home, the home. And then other people, often city people, have moved from apartment to apartment over the course of years. So those are some of the variables that I noticed in coming here.
Hi. I thought I would talk a little bit about what it might be like for couples moving here. I know there are many single folks who move here, but I'm going to talk because that's my experience. And I think moving here as a couple presents a unique challenge because we're really talking about 3 adjustments. My adjustment, the other person's adjustment, and our adjustment. And there's so many reasons why people decide to move to a CCRC in Woodland Pond in particular, so I wanted to just kind of look at that from a couple's standpoint. On the one hand, it might be a couple who both wanted to move here, and Jeffrey and I both wanted to move here, so we're on the lucky end of the spectrum. But I'm also very much aware that not every couple that moves here has that. There are many couples here where one person wanted to move here and the other person didn't. And within that couple, the person who didn't want to move here felt, well, I'll be supportive, even though I don't want to move here. I want to move here for my partner. And then there are couples where one person wanted to move here and the other person didn't, and feels grudgingly, comes in here grudgingly. There are couples who move here because both couples need the medical and the social care that Woodland Pond provides. But many more couples who move here where one person needs that kind of support and the other person doesn't, and that presents a very different dynamic. There are couples that move here because a family member wanted them to move here, because the family member felt that one person, or perhaps both of the couple, needed the support of Woodland Pond. Another variation that we've seen is a couple who moves here because they have family or friends in the neighborhood and are very happy about that, and those relationships continue well past their move-in date. But there are some people who move here who have family and friends, and somehow that dries up. And for whatever reason, their relationships with those family members and those friends just seem to kind of evaporate. There are some people who move here and their family and friends don't visit. There are some people who move here, as Wayne said, who know people in the area, and there are some people who move here absolutely without any knowledge of New Paltz, of Woodland Pond. It's like they're moving here from Mars. And that presents a very different, unique challenge. And lastly, there are couples who move here and share a secret, and they don't want to share that secret, whatever that secret might be. We all know that this is a very friendly, a very intense community, but some people don't like that. Some people are not used to that. Some people don't want to talk about whatever is their secret. So we have to be kind of mindful of that and not take offense. So in deference to all the single folks out there, I just did want to focus on couples and that unique challenge. Is that a bong?
That was it. I'll put it on for myself. You can see I don't use the baking timer often. Talking about wellness, we have another team member who's not with us today. Our friend Rita Stein has a lot to contribute to our task force, but she's been out ill for a couple of weeks. And a wonderful thing that can be seen out of this is she came here not knowing anyone, but she has people who are taking her to the doctor, who are giving her food, who are making phone calls. They've helped her get through the transition of the situation she's dealing with right now. Transitions come all over the place. I pointed out that I'm a 9-year resident. I came with my husband, whom I had been married to for 58 years. 3 years ago, he died. We were together for a year and a half before we were separated. He ended in that year and a half going through a deep depression, a tremendous decline. He had been a journalist, he was a wordsmith. He got 3 papers a day and would walk down the stairs to the concierge and come back to our apartment. And within that year and a half, he no longer could read and comprehend. and could no longer talk. We didn't even visit the health center when we came here. We weren't going to need that, but you never know what life holds. So yep, 3 years ago, 4 years he spent in the health center, part of the time Garden View, the last part of the time when he had to be in a wheelchair and physically fed and everything done for him. I still could see him every morning and be with him every afternoon. And then COVID hit. In the last 4 months of his life, I was not even allowed to look in his window. Transition again. But I have friends here. This is a new family. Yes, I have 3 daughters who are extremely supportive, one who lives in New Paltz, one in Boston, and one in Long Island. But it's being alone. It's another transition. Loss is strong. You become friends here, and those friends may have to move to assisted living. They may go into Garden View, but you can still be friends because you live here and you can go visit them. And then some people who live here have lost a child. And they don't have to suffer alone because neighbors can extend their concern and their care. Others have moved here and within a month have lost their spouse who came with them. Talk about a transition. We all have to reach out and open our hearts to them because that's an unbearable transition that lasts. But then also we recognize some of us have a fear of dying ourselves. Death is another concern. And with that, there's a lot of loneliness that exists. So I'm reading you something that came from Gail Sheehy's book. Many of you remember passages. Life goes better when you see adversity, when you meet the challenge, when you deal with the unexpected, and you see all of it as an opportunity. Look for the good.
Hi, everybody. I think I know most of you and you know me. Pat ended on an optimistic note of facing adversity, facing new situations, dealing with them and coming through. I'm sort of starting in an opposite corner. I was assigned to talk about people who are working and people who are retired. And at first I thought, well, almost everybody's retired. And that's probably true. But there are some of us who are still working, and by working I mean employed, getting a salary, having to show up, having work responsibilities. And I thought about it, and I thought, why do some of us still work? It's probably not a financial issue. What is it that keeps us working? And what I've come up with is it's so much a part of our identity that we can't let go of it. It's not really a choice. We're afraid to let go of it. We don't know what's going to be on the other side if we're not a so-and-so that we've been for 50 years. And I think there's something coming here in transitions, the idea of letting go of that, of really facing retirement, aging, living in a supportive community. For some of us, it's kind of unnerving, and we want to be independent. I think Pat mentioned, or someone said it's like living in a hotel. I've heard people say, and I can identify with, it's like being on a cruise, but you can't get off the boat. And why do we want to get off the boat? We want the headaches of owning a home or living in an apartment. We want the headaches of taking care of a car, of making plans with friends when we have to travel. It's what we know. It's who we are. And I think the idea of giving it up, for some of us, is pretty threatening. So I thought, what can I say, or what can I even think that's optimistic about this? And here's what I came up with. There are people who are working or retired but have to feel useful. Some of us grew up knowing when you grow up, you're going to work. We were never told you're going to retire, you're just going to work. And so we worked. And in a way, that's what makes us feel useful. And my thought was, these people, if you're on committees, if you're leading groups, if you have responsibility, people can say, gee, you're so busy, but you feel effective, you feel like you're doing something in a work-related mode. I just thought of Woodland Life. Every month in Woodland Life, it says who are the writers, who edited the material, and I'm sure a lot of those people were involved with writing in their professional life and now use it in this way. There are other people who maybe are fortunate, they know how to relax. They can really go on a cruise for more than 5 days. And those people, I think, can enjoy being part of an activity, being part of a book group, being part of a group that plays cards or bridge, and being part of a group enjoying, but not feeling you have to produce X or Y. So, and another thought of what we almost retired people can do, and people who feel this way, there are a lot of opportunities to help out. For example, Neighbor Corps in the health center is developing, and their program is people from independent living take someone from the health center to an activity over here where they can't get there themselves. When the activity is over, you take them home. That's all you do. You help them get, if it's a wheelchair or walking or whatever, helping them get from the health center to the pack. And an hour or two later, taking them back. That really makes a difference. I know some people read to other people and get a lot of pleasure out of reading, of doing some kind of service. So I think there are different people with different orientations, and there's room for all of it to be expressed here at Woodland Pond. I want to move on a little bit in terms of adjustment to the issue of whether you're coupled or not, the sense of being alone, the sense of privacy, versus people who love the sense of community. And I think the adjustment of finding a path that works for you, where you can be alone as much as you want, and you can find something that's of interest. Certainly we all have to eat dinner, I think is important, and it's important for people who love community to respect the people who need less of it. So I think this is one dimension of transitioning to Woodland Pond that to some extent is on everybody's mind. Thank you.
That's our take. That's our take. And what we want to do now is let this be your time. We want you to share the transition issues that you've had. How many of you heard something that connected to you with our talk? Well, good. There's some more. May I start?
Pat,
You do want to talk?
Artie's gonna take the mic
Okay,
around.
got it. Good.
My husband and I retired from Dutchess County to the beaches of North Carolina. I lived there 20 years, 16 without him. I had cultural shock when I moved there. I came back here and I had cultural shock all over again. People here walk so fast, talk so fast, and nobody at the grocery store said, "Have a blessed day." I have to say, I sat in my apartment and I could tear up even now thinking about it, how miserable I was. And I sat there and I thought, what have I done? I'm going to be here the rest of my life. What have I done? And I'm fortunate in that my daughter and son-in-law lived in Red Hook across the river at that time. They're here now, which is even better. I had to go through the whole process of changing my license on my car, changing my driver's license, changing my address on all those important papers. You all did that, no matter where you came from. I was fortunate in that my son-in-law took me under his arm and escorted me to the courthouse in Kingston so I could take care of all those papers. Some of you that have come out of state didn't have that opportunity of doing that. And I really don't know if the welcoming committee has anyone that helps people with that transition, but that in itself is extremely stressful. Realizing that you're no longer a citizen of wherever, you're now New York State. Also, one thing that helped me, and I'm a person that I'm a doer. And even though I was really depressed and wanted to sink into just go away, not be here anymore, I decided I had to take something upon myself. And we all know those books that we have of biographies that sit in the various areas. Every night, I went through that book and I found one or two people, sometimes three. And my goal for the next day or two was to find that person and say, "Hello," whatever their name was, "I'm Jenny Cannon, I'm here now," and tell them a little bit about myself. That was a great help, and hopefully the welcoming committee does remind people that they can do that. I made a good move. I still miss my life in North Carolina. I keep up with my friends there, but I have many, many friends here, and I did the right thing.
I'll take a minute. Two. We're probably among the longest residents here. We came in 2009, and my motivation was, I don't think Roger agreed with me at the moment when I said, I think we had to go to Woodland Pond and have a tour. And we both liked the place, but the reason I was motivated to get him here was we had lived in a parsonage for 33 years, And then we had our own house in Woodstock, first house we ever owned. And his gifts are not having somebody come in and take care of our property, which we were blessed with in Red Hook. The church members took care of our property. And one day in Woodstock, after about 12 years there, I find him on a tall ladder trying to repair a gutter. And that did it for me, because I could just picture that ladder falling, and that would be, if not the end of him, a very serious fall. So I said, I think we better go look at Woodland Pond, and they'll take care of everything for us, which they do. Thank you.
Others, you've all had transitions.
I moved here in December. My husband had already moved in November, and he went immediately into memory care. My husband died early January. I eventually sold my house because I hadn't sold it yet, and I'm still sort of living in two places. And I don't like coming to these kind of meetings because I internalize everybody's sadness. But my issues right now are things like just finding friends that can do the same kind of things I'm interested in. And I went on the tour yesterday of New Pulse and Lily Beck. They showed us the path to the platform. I didn't know there was a platform. I would like to go down that path. I don't want to go down alone. I don't know who to ask to go with me. And another thing, in my home, I had a bird feeder. I'm on the 4th floor, well, 6th floor, 4 floors up. And I really want to make friends with somebody in the cottages that have a bird feeder, so I can just come over. I'll bring bird seed, just so I can watch the birds for an hour, a couple times during the winter. And those kind of things are important to me. And that's, I've joined some clubs here, and I think I've made some good choices in the clubs I've joined, because I'm interested in it, and I have fun at the meetings and doing the assignments for iPhone Camera Club and that sort of thing. But, I need to find some friends who are interested in the same things I am. And that's my challenge. And I don't really make friends easily, but I am a nice person, honestly. It's just I'm not outgoing. Story.
Tell us your name.
My name is Ruth Sheets.
My story is a little different. In 2013, we were living high on the high. I had retired from IBM. We bought a condo in Florida. We were having a great time. We had our home in Poughkeepsie. We had another condo in Poughkeepsie that I had bought from my mother, who had recently, at that time, passed away, and I had rented it out, so everything was going great. But going back in history a little bit before I continue, my wife's father had early symptoms of dementia, which developed, ended up taking care of him in our home, going through the experiences of caring for a person with dementia. My wife's older sister had dementia, and guess what? I was concerned as to whether or not my wife had that same exposure. Well, in the latter part of 13, some of my neighbors in Florida started to come up and chat with me and say, Lois is acting a little different this year. She got a problem. Lois was my wife. And guess what? Some of the very, very early signs of dementia. I had a friend in Poughkeepsie that was familiar with this place called Woodland Pond. And he had talked to me about Woodland Pond for approximately 2 years. And I suddenly said, it's time for a change. Not that I wanted to at the time, but I felt that it was necessary. So we sold all 3 properties, and we moved to Woodland Pond. My wife never really argued, why are we doing this, et cetera, et cetera. So we transitioned to Woodland Pond rather quickly. But our sights were on, or my sights were on the Out Center, not really on independent living. I wanted to make sure that my wife would have the best care. But guess what? Then I went through another transition. We moved into our cottage. We both liked it a lot. But my wife continued to develop dementia. One of the good things at that time was that the way the dining was set up, you had a chance to eat with different people every evening. And that was a real plus to us. And my wife, although was showing early signs, still had a great sense of humor, was a good conversationalist, etc. But that developed another problem, another transition. All of a sudden, emotionally, I couldn't give her up. And I couldn't say, Lois, next week, you're going to be moving to the health center. And we went on and on. Lo, another transition. One morning I woke up and I didn't feel too well. The day nurse came over and said, Ted, you need to be in the hospital. And being the typical guy, I said, not me, hey, I'll be all right. I'll be okay tomorrow. You need to go to the hospital. I'm calling an ambulance. Stage 4 lymphoma. That same day, Woodland Pond moved my wife from her home into the memory unit. I came back. I found that I could be with her every day. And as she developed, I was able to participate with her helping to walk. It got to helping her eat. And then, of course, I lost her. Another transition. And at that time, I transitioned into what I would call, that I saw the Woodland Pond of today. Great activities. I never looked back. Thank you.
It's very easy for me to think, oh, I'm so different from everybody because I'm a future president. I'm kind of signed on the line, but I'm also a lot like all of you, and I appreciate everything I'm hearing. I've had numerous transitions. I retired 5 years ago. I lived in Bethesda, Maryland. I moved up here. I bought a house in Hurley. I have 2 families nearby, but I discovered I'm older than I think I am. And the house I bought, I don't have the energy that I used to have. But I'm struggling, and I don't hear many people talk about this. I went to one of the luncheons, and I didn't realize it wasn't residents, it was people that were thinking about it, and there was a panel. And I mentioned that I feel guilty. And a gentleman on the panel came and sat with me and acknowledged that he heard the word guilty. So I'm reminded of it again, because I'm very grateful to think about being here. But I do struggle with the side of, oh, what am I doing? My kids are all artists, and they're all great, but they don't have tons of money. And I'm like, am I being too generous with myself doing this? Should I be helping people in Kingston that need more money? So I struggle with the issue of gratitude and a little bit of guilt. But I'm working on it, and I am committed to being here. I am, a long time ago, a grandmother of my son-in-law, she was in a retirement place, and she had a good sense of humor, and she said she always called it a finishing school. And I thought that was great, because I thought I only took the finishing part as, you go and you learn how to dance and you learn how to eat right. I didn't think about the part of the finishing school. The odds are that I will die here. And it's a powerful thought. I love that you have this program, that it's called Transition. And I was reading, is it Pema Chodron? Anyway, the Buddhist lady. She made the point in her book, How You Live is How You Die. She talked about transition, and we do it all the time. And all of a sudden, this big transition didn't seem so overwhelming. It made me realize, like, every minute we transition. Then I'm like, okay, I know how to do this. I do it every minute. Thank you for listening.
What was your name, please? Eileen McClatchy. Oh, in the mic.
Eileen McClatchy. I live in Rolling Meadows, and I've met people that their daughter lives, I think it's Sue, her daughter lives in Rolling Meadows, so it's made connections for me already. And I'll tell you, when I moved up here, it's hard to be old and make new friends in a regular community. And so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for asking for my name.
Thank you, Eileen. I've heard all the transition stuff, but finishing school is a lot more pleasant than what my son said to me about 25 years ago. He worked on a newspaper in Buffalo, and at the end of the Peace Bridge, there was a Episcopalian retirement home. It's now torn down. I outlived that one. I never got there. But he said, Dad, I finally found God's waiting room for you. And that's been a very hard thing for me here to erase. The last trip we made a whole bunch in the last several weeks. But the last time I came home, I felt like, that's my bed. I'm finally gonna get to sleep in my bed, in my room, and have somebody make me dinner.
I'm Annette Johnson. A lot of you know me. I'm a member of the Welcome Committee, And I'm delighted to hear what all of you have to say and that you've decided to deal with the issues of transitioning. What I wonder, I see as one huge issue is eating and meals. And we had to go through a whole lot of changes during COVID. There was no way. The dining room was closed, and then they couldn't serve very many, and then there was no staff. There were some real problems, so they put in effect certain procedures. But I wondered if some of you could address, I think Ted may have mentioned something about the dining room, and maybe somebody else did. It's how you meet people. I mean, I was so lucky I came in before COVID, and I was a little bashful, but you know, they seated me, and I met people, and it didn't take too long to find people like me. And then I also liked some of the ones that weren't like me.
Can I follow up to that quickly? One of the things when I came here, the welcoming committee was not as active as it is now. And I had a really hard time going down by myself to the dining room. And I am guessing, you know what, I even have a hard time now making reservations. I go through a whole thing of rejection. I'm going to call this person and they're going to reject me. So I don't make reservations. And I'm sure it's extremely hard for those newer people to get to the dining room and make those reservations. So I really want to put a plug in for Meet Your Neighbor dining, which comes soon next week.
Is that what they call it?
Meet Your Neighbor. Meet Your Neighbor. It's a good way to get to know people. We used to just come down and get seated, and that's how I got to know a lot of people.
I know.
Artie,
I know.
I'd like to say something. Is this on?
It's on.
It's on. I'd like to say something. I'd like to say something, not as a panelist, but as a resident. I couldn't agree more with Annette. When we came here, you went down to dinner. You didn't know anybody. You sat with the people who were online in front of you or behind you. Or you saw someone you knew, and you said, hey, let's eat together. And you all stood online together, so the four of you were seated. And this went on for months and months and months, all the time, that was it. And you met people, and every dinner was interesting. And to this day, I remember I would have fascinating conversations with people. I had no idea the next day who they were. I didn't remember faces. I thought, gee, I'm going to pass someone that I was so engaged with. No clue. But I'm only sorry that management isn't here, because I agree with Annette and Jenny that it's pretty dire, and the extent to which the new people and the old people are separated is not good.
Just a response to that. I find that at the desk, and we hardly ever make reservations. Somebody else will make reservations and invite us ahead of time, but that's, but I find that Ruth at the hostess desk tends to seat newcomers with us, because she knows we've been here and they'll have a lot of questions, and they get to, we get to answer what we think, and then they can find out more as time goes on.
Going back to talking about the food, as most of you know, I'm from California, and I'm a vegan. I'm the weird one from California, but there's a vegan. And limited choices and everything else, but the first time I sat with somebody and I said I was vegan, they said, "Are you gonna try and convert us to eat that way?" And I said no, and I had to explain it's my choice. And it was hard to get more reservations to eat with other people, but I have since made it my business to invite people that I meet and have some regular meals and so on. And Ruth is very helpful in making the reservations when you can't get a reservation. And the dining room, one of the reasons I came here was because it was explained to management at the time. My sister said, "My sister's a vegan, will that be a problem?" And I was told, not a problem, so, and not a problem to have a pet. And so that was 2 reasons, and so I came. From the time I made the decision to come to the time I had packed up my house and moved and came here was 6 weeks. And that was, you know, quite a transition going away, but to me it was the best decision I made. The friends I've made, when I tell my friends back in California that they've made new friends, they go, "Oh, really?" And I go, "Yep, 73 to 103 years old, and we're great." So, everybody here treats me as you would your friend, so I appreciate that. And it's just a fantastic group of people to get to know, and in some cases you have to, you know, go up to somebody and say, "My name is," and "I used to do this for a living, I don't anymore, what did you do?" And start a conversation.
I just want to say, Ina's the best raffle person around. She'll catch you sooner or later.
They know, I've gotten them all.
Another hand? Yeah.
I guess I was one of those people who was concerned with death and dying because I was going through it with a number of family members for the last many years. So I was looking forward to a place where I would enjoy my last days. And I heard good things about this place from an old friend of a friend of mine who I understand died last year, but also a current friend, Wayne, who everyone knows is the friendliest person around. And when they talked it up, I thought this sounded certainly better than the places I heard about in Westchester. I will say about the dining, I've been fortunate as a singleton to be placed with all of you at various times. And I've gotten to meet more people that way. To me, it's been at random. And I may not remember your names, but I've enjoyed talking with just about everyone. My name is Margot Elkin, North Wing, and hope to see you all.
It is challenging to make reservations, but you can make reservations for a particular time. And as Margot said, you will be Ruth will put you with somebody to. When we came here 4 years ago, we made from the time we said we'll take X apartment, it was 3.5 weeks till we moved here. It was extremely stressful getting rid of so much stuff and coming that I lost my appetite, I lost weight. It was very, very stressful, that's all.
Many of us realize this is the last move, but it's not your last transition. Transitions are going to keep coming at you. Let it be with the rest of us. Consider Woodland Pond your new family. And before you leave, if you know that the person behind you is unfamiliar to you, extend a welcome hand, because that's how we get to know one another. We have a handout for you. Many of those quotes that I shared with you that Sarah had have been condensed and is put on a page. It's a handout. On the back page is an illustration that was done by a teenager before going into high school. Change. That's what it's all about. Face the changes and look for the good. Thanks for coming, folks. Monday is the round table, 10 a.m. in the conference room. Thank you.
And if everybody comes, we'll